But RJ Van Sant is our guest this evening. We are thrilled to have him and talking about the tremendous work that's being done in Malibu Creek and the restoration efforts that are happening there involving California trout and other issues. This is a larger issue than just water and fish. It's an issue that has to do with the entire ecosystem and supporting everything that's happening in an area that's been urbanized but still has very great important role, really important role in our watershed. So RJ, welcome and thank you so much for being here this evening.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So RJ, you have a climate journey yourself that took you to this work, but as we were discussing earlier, it kind of took you in an initial direction that was more about vehicles and fuels and things along those lines. Could you talk about what got you interested in sustainability and how your path kind of evolved and from youth up to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah, and I was thinking about that a little bit more today. There wasn't, I don't think, a defining specific moment in my life where I was, like the environment matters. I want to do this for my life. It was, I think, slow throughout life. And I think what really started it for me actually was my grandfather. He was a word worker and a cabinet maker, but also a birder. And so I remember visiting him. He lived outside of Reno in the California side, and we would go up and visit him and go on hikes. And he would point out birds. And as a kid, I would entertain it and look at it, and I was like, oh, that's sort of interesting. Whatever. Wasn't my favorite thing to do, but I think there was something in there that just sort of instilled in me as a kid that I didn't realize at the time that really made a difference. So I think that was, as a kid, that was the early on part of it. And then I think I just kind of grew up in a household that didn't have a lot of money. And it was more about waste reduction from, I think, a financial standpoint, but also it just made sense. Like it just made sense to me. Like, why waste things? It's silly. And, in my opinion, it's simple to say, but we don't have infinite resources. And so um, using things carefully and not being wasteful was really instilled in me younger too. And so that kind of just kept growing into sustainability. And then I got into was kind of into cars and kind of a gearhead a little bit, getting my driver's license and things like that, but really got interested in alternative fuels. And then this was kind of pre-EVs, really. This was I think biodiesel or that sort of fuel, alternative fuels, was something that I was really interested in. There was kind of a underground movement, if you will, with using vegetable oil for diesel engines, like old
Bench
Mercedes.
restaurant oil often, and yeah.
Yeah, so stuff like that. And so I was kind of going down that route, and did my master's work actually in alternative fuels and biodiesel particularly, but always enjoyed biology and being outside and hiking and camping and those sort of things. And so um, kind of somewhat fell into, if you will, like the biology from a career standpoint. And once I started doing that, really appreciated it and got very interested in it and decided to shift kind of away from the automotive side of things. But I could see I could have very easily gone either direction, and I just the way things worked out, I went towards the more biology side of things.
I'm curious about the people, and I've had this thought before, were so invested in the biodiesel movement. And, first of all, diesel engines are increasingly less common, so it's more difficult than ever to actually pursue that. And for a number of reasons, electric cars are now cheaper and easier to pursue. Um, what was it like to have worked on something that was being driven by sustainability and desire to make the world a better place, and then kind of have technology usurp that entire movement to some extent?
Yeah, you're talking about like basically EVs usurping
Yeah,
the biodiesel movement.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think personally for me, I didn't I didn't care. I thought whatever technology gets us there, whatever's the most sustainable, whatever's the most logical, whatever's the most able to introduce that to the masses is what I mattered to me was just the right direction. So I didn't have a preference. I wasn't a diesel advocate or a diesel person that was really into that. It was EVs weren't a thing really. This was I remember I was volunteering at a nonprofit in Santa Monica at the time and got to drive the mini EV, the Mini Cooper EV. The organization had two of them that were, there were only a few of them, or maybe a few hundred, and that's it. And it was more
Right.
of a not a
Compliance
mass
cars.
produced
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting to drive that and just, I think seeing um how quiet they were, how quick they were, they're just really nice to drive. Like they're better to drive than petroleum diesel cars. Like I think it's hard to argue with that if you've ever driven one, right? So it made sense, and I was excited for it.
So take us on the journey of how you then migrated to and working for California State Parks.
Yeah, so I have worked for the federal government, for the private industry, and for the state now. So I started with state parks about 3 years ago. I was working prior to that in the private sector as a consultant, doing doing some interesting work, but it wasn't as fulfilling to me. I wanted to do something that was 100% focused on doing the right thing, doing something positive for the environment that wasn't tied to mitigation, to offsetting impacts, right? I wanted to do something that was 100% focused on doing, in my opinion, the right thing, the things we need to do. So I was just kind of looking around and came across this opportunity to lead, from as a project manager from state park side of things, the removal of a dam, which I thought was, it was kind of always a bucket list sort of thing in my career as a biologist to do some sort of dam removal because it's such a substantial restoration project, and it's just from the physical looks of it and the undertaking of it, it's a substantial thing, but it also has a substantial benefit to the ecosystem. So it was something that I found and got lucky enough to get hired on, and have been working on this exclusively for the last 3 years.
So tell us about the Malibu Creek Ecosystem Restoration Project. What's the scope? What's the idea? What are the goals? And where are we in that process?
Yeah. Yeah, so the project has been going on in some capacity since like the 80s. Like it was I think envisioned in the 80s and probably before that by somebody, but got some steam, I think, in the 1980s, and then the 90s. And so it's a project on Malibu Creek, so upstream from the lagoon. It's in Malibu Creek State Park. The dam itself is owned by state parks, so it's Ringe Dam. So um, if anybody knows about the Ringe family, very interesting family. They owned 20 something miles of coastline in Malibu and like 13,000 acres. So basically, that entire coastline in Malibu and then some was all privately owned. Really interesting book called The King and Queen of Malibu. If you're interested in learning more, it's a really easy, fun read. Sort of side tangent to look at that. But anyway, so this was a dam built by a private family in 1926, and they built it just for their own water use, for their own minor agriculture, to sell some of it potentially. So pretty small, but it's a 100-foot tall dam, 130 feet wide in the middle of Malibu Creek. So if you've ever driven Malibu Canyon Road or Las Virgenes Road, which was the same, Las Virgenes from the 101 going south, Malibu Canyon goes north. It's right there. You can't see it from the road, but there's a pull off and you can walk 30 seconds or less and actually see it. So a lot of people go by and don't actually know it's there. But so that dam was installed, like I said, 100 years ago. And as you can, maybe imagine, putting a dam in the middle of a creek is like putting a wall on a highway for wildlife, right? All of a sudden, fish, amphibians, turtles, etc., and then even terrestrial species that use that corridor, use that river area to move up and downstream for cover, for food, they just all of a sudden hit this wall, right? And
Mhm.
this project is really focused on steelhead trout. So it's a federally and state endangered fish. It's an indicator species, so it really by having trout present, you really have a good idea of the health of the stream because without them, the stream is generally not healthy. So they're a good indication of the overall health of the watershed of the creek. And so we've been working really since uh, 15-ish. There was a lot of work done getting through the whole environmental process. As you can imagine, removing a dam is a big endeavor in this time and age from a financial, from a logistics, from a cost, from a feasibility, et cetera. So it just takes lots of work, lots of studies, lots of modeling, lots of planning, et cetera. But we've been working really diligently, especially the last 3 years, on how to remove it. It would be,
But
yeah, it would be because it's in Malibu, it's in a developed area, not the most developed area at all, especially in the greater Los Angeles area. It's actually pretty undeveloped, but there are homes downstream and there are homes very close to this creek. So if you went in there and did the dramatic thing of, dynamite blowing the thing up or something of that sort, you'd have a lot of entities, a lot of businesses and residences downstream that would be negatively impacted. So we have to be a little more methodic on how we get the
so how
dam
does
out.
that work? You just slowly lower the levels over time? Is that
Yeah, so we've looked at a few different ways to do it. We looked at so the dam is full of sediment, 100% full of sediment. It filled within about 30 to 40 years, really, really fast after it was built. So it doesn't serve any flood control capacity. It doesn't serve any use whatsoever. So we looked at various methods to get it out. We looked at, can we slurry all that sediment, like mix it with water, slurry it through a pipe downstream offshore? Can we do a conveyor belt, et cetera? But what what came of all that, and that's really the most feasible, is to go in there with trucks, kind of the simple way, and excavate all that material. And like you said, and then it'll get lowered year by year. So it's about a 5 to 6 year period of lowering that dam down
and you've
as
begun that
you're
process
taking
at
the
this point?
material out. I'm sorry.
And where are you on that 5-year schedule at this point?
So we are finishing up our design and modeling plans. We are just going to start the permitting pathway. But we've been working with the regulatory agencies a lot, and so they're on board, which is great. They're very supportive of the project. There's a lot of support of for the project. So now we're just finishing up. So we should about a year time frame. We should have full design plans, everything completed. But the big question for us right now is how do we fund the removal of this? We have funding through final design. We're just not at that point of getting funding for removal. So we're working on, how do we find that money? And the state of our federal government right now, restoration not a top priority, to say the least. So we have to get creative. The state budget not great right now at all. So we need to get creative. But things change, right? Like administrations change, budgets get whole again. So we feel good that it will happen. We just have to get the right people together, the right money together, the right legislators together, et cetera. And that process is kind of just starting right now, kind of getting rolling based on where we're at in the design.
Given we have an election just in a couple of days here, have any of the candidates taken a position on helping to support funding this project? The gubernatorial candidates.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It is so the project is so it's the largest restoration project that State Parks is undertaking. I think it's probably don't quote me on this, but it may be the largest restoration State Parks has ever undertaken. It is in so Governor Newsom has this California salmon strategy that's this plan and ways to help recovery of salmon species. I think, as a lot of people know, they're not doing well, and so this project is specifically mentioned in that. It's mentioned and specifically called out in some statewide documents, which really helps with recognition, which then helps with potential funding opportunities.
Right, right. So I'm curious if the Prop 4 funding that was passed in 2024, if any of that is available to direct to a project like this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Matilaha Dam, just north of us in Ventura, has gotten a lot of money from that Prop 4. Um, there, for whatever reason, it was before I was with state parks. There was nothing so Matilaha was specifically called out in some of that Prop 4 money. This project was not. But there is some money in that proposition that is specifically for dam and barrier removal. So we have been talking with the Wildlife Conservation Board and Coastal Conservancy, who are some grantors of that money, about potentially tapping into that.
Have you guys been affected in terms of your timeline and your planning by the Franklin fire or the Palisades fire and just, basically surrounded by these huge fires that overlapped your area?
Yeah, fortunately for us, we haven't. There hasn't been any impact to us on that from a timing and a progress standpoint.
Hmm.
Excuse me. The Franklin fire ripped through that area. I was actually just looking. I have a before after of the dam. I could actually,
Share those, yeah, if you have them.
yeah, I could pull it up. Of of the dam, of the fire. So from a timing standpoint, it didn't change anything, but it definitely um, brought it to our immediate attention that the
Sure.
impacts of fire and really and to us of sediment after the fire. So right, you burn the vegetation and that hillside now doesn't have those plants holding on to that sediment, and so it gets washed down easier. So thinking about that a little bit more. Let's see.
I think you have to click on and request share the first time you do it, but I'll
Okay,
immediately
yeah,
click
just
it if you do
pulling
that.
the photo up. Hmm. All right. Are you guys seeing
Yeah, we
that?
are. Yeah.
Okay. Can you see the both photos, or is stuff in the way here?
The first one is trimmed a little bit. We're seeing, there we go.
Zoom it. Okay. Um,
Oh, don't make them smaller. We just
Right.
shows one at a time if we have to. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the dam here. Might as well just zoom in a little bit. All right. Be able to see that okay?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So here, good visual. Here's the dam, 100 feet tall. Here's the spillway. So this is all Malibu Creek. You can kind of tell, the level of the creek here is up to the dam. So basically, the level of the creek right here is 100 feet higher than it historically was before the dam was there.
Just because it all silted in.
It all silted in, yeah. So the amount of material behind there is about enough to fill the LA Coliseum completely. It's 800,000 cubic yards. I don't know if that means anything, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
material, yeah.
And
This,
I know a lot of the dams that we built early mid 20th century have silted in. Was this anticipated for this and it was still pursued as an energy issue or something along those lines? Or do you know the history with that respect?
of was it when it was built? Was it anticipated it
Was
would
it
silt?
anticipated that it would silt in so quickly? You said 30 to 40 years.
I don't think so. I would like to think, I have no evidence of this, but that the Ringe family who built this probably would not have built it had they known it would silt in so fast
Right.
and become useless really, really quickly.
Right.
That's just speculation. So no, and it was not used for power. It was just water supply for their own use. It wasn't water supply for a town or a lot of homes or anything. It's kind of their own private use because they owned this entire area there. So which is pretty interesting in itself.
Right. Right. And then you're going to show us the after the Franklin fire?
Yeah, so this is March of 23 and here's February of 05. So not not much
Wow.
longer after. So you can see, just completely denuded. Um, and
Has there been a landslide there, or that's just the vegetation has burned away?
That's just the vegetation burned away. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's grown in actually. And looking at this made me think I need to go back and take this same photo right now and see what it looks like right now.
Hmm.
It's definitely, dry this. It's definitely over. It's grown in some, but it's not where
Right.
it was pre-fire.
Right. Yeah, we definitely have a lot of fire follower plants, so that
Yeah.
would have established pretty quickly. But yeah, and so what is the how far upstream is this from where it dumps into the Pacific?
Yeah, so it's three miles. So if you're standing at Malibu Lagoon, basically, if you would swim 3 miles upstream, you'd bonk your head into the dam. And so that
Is there enough of a creek there to swim it the whole way?
there is so I I get to so the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains is an organization that does a lot of work here. Um, I get to participate in snorkel surveys in the creek for steelhead, and it's really surprising how deep and shallow it is in different sections. There'll be sections where you're getting up, like you're in a full wetsuit, snorkel mask, you're getting up and you're walking on rocks and kind of going through the creek in, you know, a few inches to a foot of water. And then there's other sections that come against up against the side of the hillside or some big boulders that are 10 feet deep. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty cool to see the diversity in there and to see how much habitat there is and what can survive in a creek like
Right.
this.
So, two questions for you regarding the process. Can you tell me, first of all, I mean, if there are steelhead there now, how will removing the dam change it? Number one. And number two, is there a concern that in the short term, the erosion of the silt will cause, additional problems while everything's normalizing again?
Yeah, good questions. So, yes, steelhead have historically been in the creeks. Actually, if I can just for let me just. So this is a photo from 1943. Is the bar blocking the view of Zoom or is
No,
it my?
we can see the whole thing. Yeah.
Yes, this is from 43. So steelhead have been in the creek for as long as we know. They were still able to survive in that lower 3 miles of the creek somehow, which is great. But
I'm
that
assuming they rarely get anywhere close to this size, though. Or is that
this
wrong?
they they get they get pretty big if they're steelhead, if they're making their way from the ocean into the creeks, they're already pretty substantial because they grow much
Okay,
bigger. Yeah.
gotcha.
So like rainbow trout, which are the same exact species that just live in freshwater,
Right,
steelhead are a version of rainbow trout which make their way to the ocean, and so they grow substantially larger in the ocean. So yeah, they will get this big. Actually, just about a month ago, we found one that was about 22 inches or so in the creek, which was really exciting because we hadn't seen them for a number of years. So to know, they're resistant. Like they find a way. It's cyclical depending on flows, depending on fire, etc. But they find a way to make it there. So and then in regard to the second part with sediment, so the one of the benefits of not letting not doing the big explosion of the dam blowing it up, which wouldn't probably happen in reality, but of trucking the sediment out and I didn't mention that a lot of that material is sand. It's clean. We've done testing on it. That material would be going to our beaches anyway. So
mhm,
that sand material is going to get sorted and will get placed on local beaches where it belongs, right? Like not
right,
taking it
right.
to a landfill, not taking it off site somewhere to
So
a
it
different.
offsets beach erosion. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some good benefits from, I think a coastal erosion and beach access standpoint with that. So it'll get trucked,
And
it'll
correct me
be.
if I'm wrong, but the restoring the original process means that all that silt that is collected behind the dam represents stuff that normally should be flowing out to the kind of estuary end of the creek anyway, and reinforcing, the I don't know, alluvial plain kind of buildup of sand at in Malibu anyway, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fortunate for the creek, for the lagoon, for the ecosystem and the animals that live within it that it filled up so fast. Because now that it's full, everything that's coming into the dam is actually leaving, generally speaking. So it's not a sediment starved system like a lot of dams that are not totally silted in.
Hmm.
If you go downstream of the dam, there's a lack of sediment, and sediment is important to creeks. It's what it's part of the system that creatures rely on. And so because this dam is full of sediment, we have sediment moving downstream. So we're not in a sediment starved, as they say, system because it is now coming in. But there was a time between when it was built and probably the 50s that no sediment was leaving. And so everything downstream of that dam looked very different and was not healthy.
Right, right. So explain to me, and I apologize for our ignorance on this, but we often hear about how salmon, when they're migrating through river systems, the returning adult salmon are critically important as essentially fertilizer for the ecosystem because they will come up and they will die. They'll be eaten by other things, and and the entire riparian system is given extra support by the nutrients they're returning from the sea. Is it a similar phenomenon with trout?
It's not nearly as substantial as it is with salmon species, and that's because steelhead are a salmon species, but they're a little bit different in that they don't die after spawning necessarily.
Hmm.
So most salmon will go up creeks, they will reproduce and then die, and that's where that they die, and that their body nourishes the creek, the trees, everything that's growing around it. Steelhead can actually go up, reproduce, go back out, and do that multiple times.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's also just in Southern California, we don't have the numbers, the quantity of salmon or steelhead that they do, like that Northern California has, or Oregon or Washington. They just have much larger numbers, and so more numbers, you have more salmon dying and more of that nutrients going into it. But they're still a very important part of the overall food chain.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you have any additional photos you'd like to show us before I open it up to questions from other people?
Let's see. No, I think that those were the yeah. Oh, I didn't realize I was still sharing.
All good. All good. Okay, so in terms of your personal work on this, um, can you talk about what it is that you would like to see before you leave this project? I mean, what would be the perfect kind of resolution and success for you?
Uh, well, I guess, of the project, I would simply put, I would like to see it actually happen. I would like to see it come out, right?
Right.
I would like to see the restoration happen. Um, there's a lot of good work happening. The lagoon got restored 15-ish years ago. Topanga Lagoon is currently being planned for restoration. Um, so I think, from a simple point, I would love to see this happen. And it's a big project. It's not a cheap project by any means. It's an expensive
Right.
project. So, but I think
Right. I'm
it's
sorry, go ahead.
it's important for, it's important not only for steelhead, and for that species. I think it's important for a bigger picture to show we can do meaningful restoration, to show we can undo wrongs and damage we have done in the past. Um, and I think from a state park side of things, it would be really interesting and very a big accomplishment to show an organization like that can do a restoration project of this magnitude. So yes, I would love to just see it actually happen.
Do we have estimates of today's steelhead population and anticipated estimates of what it would be in a fully healthy restored creek?
That's a good question. We do have estimates of steelhead populations. So I'll bigger picture this group or this population of steelhead basically is from Point Conception down. This is its own kind of specific. It's distinctly genetically a little bit different. They are not doing well at all. Like they're doing horribly, I think, to be frank. I think this year so far there's been, maybe 5 steelhead in that entire area from Point Conception, Santa Barbara down, seen. So they're not doing great, but there's hope. Like Topanga Creek has a lot of rainbow trout in it, not ocean going, but there's a lot of the resident verdant forms of those species. So they're not doing it, but we're doing things. We continue to do restoration activities that is benefiting these species. And this one in particular is very interesting because they have 3 miles from the lagoon to the dam now. Taking the dam out, and actually I didn't even mention there's upstream of the dam, there's smaller road culverts and crossings that were also part of the project, much simpler, that are being implemented. But we're going to go from 3 miles to 18 miles of habitat. So 15 additional miles, so 5 times as much. And when you just open up space for animals, right, it makes such a big difference. And not only are we opening space, we're opening up really good space, stuff, cold water upstream that really these species really rely on and love.
I'm going to open it up for questions from our people in attendance tonight. I know everybody was thrilled to have this topic brought to us. So if you could please, raise your hand if you have a question. I'm going to remove the spotlight. Oh, just me now. There we go. So, any questions from anyone who is here this evening? This always happens, RJ, by the way. They're very shy at the beginning. And then when we get to the end, we're running out of time. There's like 5 people who want to ask a question. So
That's the hands.
it's just the way it rolls. Andrew,
Okay.
I'm curious about the toxic materials that have built up in the sediment. Are anybody doing any monitoring or testing of the sediment to corral the toxins that have built up over the years, or are there toxins building up over the years?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, fortunately, the material is really clean. We've done chemical testing of it. We just did it last year. It was done also, gosh, 15 years or so ago. So we actually, because it's in the steep canyon, had to fly equipment down in there. So we had helicopters dropping geotechnical, like drilling equipment down in there, which was really fun to see. So we've taken core samples all the way down, and luckily it's really clean. There's no toxins, there's no metals, there's no pesticides. So it's really good material, which is great because that means it can go somewhere, on the beach or somewhere useful.
Thank you so much.
Terry.
Yeah, quick question. So I know exactly where you are now. I didn't know before, but now looking at the pictures, I've hiked out there plenty of times with the family and everything. So I had no idea what we were looking at when we'd go down into that like ravine there. So just to confirm, so by getting rid of the sediment in that dam, then the water that's at the upper creek, which like in the picture where you are, that will then be able to travel down to the ocean. Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Yeah, so the water and the sediment actually still right now travels over the dam, actually. So it's full. So it's not holding back water, it's not holding back sediment. But the main thing is it's a giant wall barrier in the creek. So if you're a fish swimming, you can't jump 100 feet right up and over this thing. There's no fish ladder, there's nothing of that sort. So it's opening up the habitat for fish, amphibians, reptiles, and then even terrestrial species that need that area to move up and downstream.
And then one more question. I was wondering if you've been able to reach out to private nonprofits like the Annenberg Foundation or something like that. I wonder if they'd want to partner with us now that finally they're getting the crossing done.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have not done that yet, but it's definitely something we're interested in doing. I think we'll be starting to do. So we're working with, so I'm with state parks. We're working with California Trout, which is a nonprofit that specifically focuses on, fish and trout. Working with them to try and think about funding and look for funding. And yeah, I think there's probably a decent chance that the funding for this is going to come from various sources and hopefully private and public funds. So if anyone has thoughts or related to that or people I can contact, I feel free to reach out because I definitely want to start building relationships and talking to folks.
David.
Hey, yeah, speaking as a former geologist and soil scientist, I'm interested in this material. How much of it is finer than sand? In other words, silt or organic material?
Yeah, not a whole lot. So as you can imagine, the bottom layer is mostly silts and clays, but the majority of it is like the sand grain size, and then we definitely have cobbles and boulders and things like that. I can't remember offhand what percentage of the material, but I think it's in like the 50% of the material behind there is sand size, like beach compatible-ish material. And we've been working with the LA County beaches and harbors. They're actually just, I think, got some approvals for their sand replenishment project. It's called Scoop, what they use for Will Rogers and Zuma and a bunch of other beaches. So that's a potential opportunity for placement of that sand material.
So this material is ideal for beach replenishment.
Yeah, not all of it is. We definitely have bigger stuff and smaller stuff, but a good amount. And I think it's in the like half of the material. Maybe it's a little bit less, but yeah, a lot of it is good. And as I mentioned, it's been tested for chemicals and constituents, and it's clean too, which is awesome.
Yeah, so to me, this is a resource.
Absolutely. Yep. No, that's so true. And we're looking at it like that. And we have interest from different folks to put that material on the beach where it would have gone anyway.
Given part of this can actually result in restoration of beaches, support of beaches for recreational purposes, is there an angle here where you could apply for Measure W funding because it's LA County?
That's a good question. I'm actually not familiar with Measure W.
Well, it's a safe, clean water
Oh,
program
yeah.
that yeah. So look up Measure W, and our organization engages on that. We would be happy to try to support you on on effort like that. Good issue to go to our water committee. Our water committee chairperson is shaking his head up and down. That's Andy. Yeah. So if we can engage with you and help you on that, I don't know. It's kind of a creative reading of Measure W potentially to use it, but there might be a way to get a source of some of the money there. Elise.
You're muted at least.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. I just got something in my eye.
No.
Okay. Uh, so is there anybody actually opposed to this? And if so, why?
Great question. There's always somebody opposed to something, right? So there's a lot of support. There's concern from the city of Malibu, mostly from a traffic standpoint with all the trucks.
Mm.
Understandably, but we're talking with them, trying to work through that. We're working with the surfers in Malibu. I didn't mention the surf break, at Surfrider Beach is actually listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which is pretty interesting. So we're trying to work with them, to ensure they're okay with the methodology and that it doesn't affect the surf break. And then there's some residents downstream that are right along the creek that we've had some meetings with, but who are actually, I think, are becoming supportive because of some actions that I think could help them potentially. So yeah, there's always some folks who I don't know if opposed, but have concerns, and so we're working through those. But you know, I do a lot of public meetings and presentations, and you know, one like tonight is really refreshing for me because it's with people who are interested and are passionate about this. So it's fun to do these. You know, it's not a public meeting that can be challenging at times. So yeah, thanks for having me. But yeah, I do appreciate it. But yeah, there's always challenges
Mhm.
from
We
various
we do
folks.
presentations through our organization too. So we've definitely been in the room before where it's like, you, what are you doing? Kind of,
Yeah,
meetings. Yeah.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
hear you. Nanju.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry if I missed it at the beginning, but did you have an estimate of what this whole project will cost? And I was wondering, um, the project at the river up north where they got rid of a bunch of dams and the salmons now are able to.
Glenn,
You're talking about Klamath? The Klamath?
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
How much did that? I mean, because they did 4 dams.
they did. Yeah, good
And where did they
question.
get the money for that?
Good questions. Yeah. Yeah, Klamath was 4 dams. They were generally able to just take them out and not let the sediment flush naturally down. So that's the most expensive part, as you can imagine, trucking out all this material. Um, so our estimates are right now, depending on a few, different ways things goes, but it's in like the $200 million range. So it's not a cheap project, right? And again, a lot of that is because of it to run trucks to truck all this sediment out is a lot is expensive. So I hadn't mentioned that, but yeah, we do have an estimate of that, and that'll get fine tuned as we finish this design.
And with respect to the project, the phase is that you basically come in with earth moving material and truck out the sediment, and eventually, and as that's going, you're chipping away at the flood at the overflow side, so it continues to come down with that is essentially it. And then at the end, is that big wall going to remain there, or do you like at that point do you break up the concrete and try to remove that as well?
Yeah, so we build a road into the canyon, go in there with equipment, take the sediment out during the dry period, and then chip away at that dam. So, lower it 10 feet, if you will, in the first year. Winter comes, we get all the equipment out of there, come back the next dry season, remove more sediment, lower that down another 10 feet. So every year the dam comes down, between like 10 and 30 feet because it's in a V-shaped canyon, right? So we do less at the beginning because it's so wide and then more at the end. So yeah, over 5 to 6 years, it's just a repeated process of sand removal, dam being lowered, sand removal, dam lowered, et cetera, et cetera. And then once everything's gone, we'll go in there and replant with native species, maybe grade the creek so it's matching alignments and elevations, et cetera. Yeah.
You said the magic word for me on replanting native species because anytime you're building an access road to those kind of places, you're introducing the opportunity for the invasive plants that really like disturbed areas. And so,
Yep.
so I'm thrilled to hear that you're already answering that question before I asked it. So,
Yeah,
uh,
there'll be a substantial, probably 5 to 10 year replanting, restoration, monitoring phase after the dam is gone.
great, wonderful. So RJ, tell me when I always ask this question at the end of interviews, but I'll ask it of you as well. When you're doing your environmental work and you're trying to get a project going, and it sounds like you're kind of in this time right now a little bit to some extent, but you're basically confronting challenges that you can't solve right away, and over you get told no. And what is it that you personally do to try to reinforce your energy to keep going and find a way to keep doing the hard work essentially?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think now now with our federal government the way it is and not a lot of support, it's harder and harder, and it's hard to not be pessimistic, I think, more and more. So for me, if you're asking on a personal note, like what I do, most of my day is spent at a computer desk. Like I make emails, like that's pretty much my job, right? So for me, it's getting outside. It's going surfing, it's getting in the water, it's going for hikes, it's getting out in nature, being with native plants, with native species, seeing what, I like to see what this world looked like, as much as I can pre-human disturbance and colonization and et cetera. So I can do that, is really helpful. I think, honestly, taking time off is important, like, resetting, taking care of your mental health, super important. So yeah, try and do those things. But for me, I think it's getting out, and then it's being, active when I can, getting adrenaline going, getting your body moving really helps me just like refocus, from a personal side.
Gotcha. I said it was my last question, and then I just realized I have a question on my list I wanted to ask and I didn't get to. I'm going to ask it because that's what I can do. Uh, in addition to the trout, I know we have our threatened, I believe it's red-legged frog in the area, and we have some other species that I don't know if we have California newt in that area, but different species that are also struggling. Could you just talk about beyond steelhead trout, do we expect benefits to other plant and or animal species as a result of this work?
Yeah, no, great question. And this project gets a lot of attention from a steelhead standpoint, but I try and make a point of it's about more than that. It's about the processes and the functions that are happening. So yeah, I think species like red-legged frog, like pond turtle, like newts, when you restore the process, the natural process, the natural hydrology, the natural sediment movement, you get plants that are used to that or adapted to that, right? These plants have been adapted to this specific rainfall patterns and floods that Southern California is so unique for millions and millions of years. So when you disrupt that by putting a dam in the way, by blocking water, by changing sediment movement, it wreaks havoc on them. So anything you can do to restore the natural processes, is important for all species. And then I'll just say a real quick little plug that we're, a separate project that we're working on is a aquatic invasive species management plan for the entire watershed of Topanga and Malibu. So that's addressing things like bullfrog, carp. There are massive carp in Malibu Creek, like snorkeling in there, and you see this 2-foot carp go by you. It's pretty crazy. So we're looking at this from different perspectives and getting rid of the invasive species, in addition to removing barriers like this dam, is things we're doing to try and help the entire watershed and ecosystem.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Last chance for anybody with a parting question for RJ. We really appreciate this. This was an interesting thing, and I want to take this opportunity to say we are an advocacy organization that is working on climate solutions, and if we can be of help in this process to you, we want to be, and so I encourage you to engage with Andy Atala, our water committee chair, but more importantly, any of us, anytime we can do anything, we are very interested in doing it. Whether that's writing a letter, whether it's meeting with politicians, whether it's actually showing up at sites to promote the event with you. All of these areas are things that we do, and we are nimble and able to help in those kind of situations. And we would love to engage on this process further if there's a way for us to be of help. I don't have a $200 million check for you, but otherwise, I think we can potentially be helpful. So thank you
No,
so
I
much for
appreciate it.
joining us this evening, and you're welcome to stay. We have a few other business things we take care of at the end of the meeting, but whether you stay or not, thank you very much again. And you're also a member now. That's the way it works. So we look forward to hopefully seeing you again. If you're interested, please come and attend our meetings. You have a standing invitation and are part of the family now. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it very much. One last thing, if you're interested in learning more, restoremalibucreek.org and
I put that in
Instagram.
the chat earlier, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And then Instagram, we have Trout does a great public outreach. There's newsletters, so there's lots of great information to stay engaged and up to date on what's going on. So thank you guys for having me. Really
Absolutely. Our pleasure.